So let's talk about this Pelicans and OKC game. The Pelicans and OKC yesterday faced off against each other, played each other yesterday, and even though I did make a video yesterday, I could not speak about this game because I didn't want to make a prediction because this was a series where I really wanted to see how the teams were playing, how the coaches were coaching, and how the stars, or at least the players who were out on the floor, looked and how confident did they look. How much were they putting into the game, and how did the superstars perform on the biggest stage. And honestly, I was surprised. First, I was surprised by the fact that the Pelicans were playing so well, even with their best players playing this badly. Herbert Jones only made 2 shots in the entire game. And even though, yes, his defense is his biggest positive, for a starter, you expect him to make more than 8 points, or at least to have better efficiency if he's just going to score 8 points. And then you had a guy like Brandon Ingram, which only scored 12, and his best part was his playmaking at the end of the game and that one layup that he made to take the lead. CJ McCollum actually played really well, especially down the stretch. He was given most of the shots, and he was the main playmaker, but I do believe that his shooting ability from three could have been better in this game. There seemed to be a lot of shots that he was just chunking them up there. And if you actually watch the game, he was self-creating more than he normally does. And finally, you had Trey Murphy, which was, in my opinion, the best offensive player, not named Jonas Valanciunas, for the Pelicans. What the Pelicans did really well this game was rebound. They got about 8 more rebounds than the Thunder, and there was a noticeable difference between Chet and Jonas Valanciunas in terms of their rebounding numbers. Chet got 11 rebounds, Jonas got 20, with 9 of them being offensive, and especially in that late of the game situation when we saw that the Pelicans had around 4 shots that they could have used to tie this game, it was a simpler, game to win for the Pelicans with how it played out for them than for OKC. I believe that OKC won mostly because of their talent. OKC is a very talented group, and I do believe that their players being able to play in the playoff setting under these expectations actually helped a lot. Also, that they have their superstar. Zion, in my opinion, would have done great in this game, in this series actually, abusing smaller big men like Jalen Williams as a forward, and Chet Holmgren as obviously the center of the OKC Thunder. I believe that he would have had the common ground to be able to abuse the size differential and really make a difference on the offensive end, especially for the Pelicans. And this is where I'm going to say, the Thunder do not translate to the playoff game. And I noticed this yesterday. I do not mean to make these bold statements this early into the series, as I do think that if the Pelicans do keep shooting this terribly, then they will lose the series eventually. And I feel pretty confident when I say that. But for guys like Shai, Giddy, Dort, these guys cannot guard the Pelicans' depth. And especially when it comes to the best players that come out of the Pelicans, there is a clear problem with the way that their roster is set up. For the regular season, their roster works because they have guys who are amazing, but their roster construction is mostly based around pretty skinny dudes who can space the floor and who can get their own shot, which is amazing for the regular season, but in the playoffs that does not work. Now, a lot of people may be confused as to what do I mean, or what am I saying when I mean when I say that in the playoffs that type of game does not work. And for anyone who knows, you just have to kind of be aware that in the playoffs the game slows down. And this is a real thing. Like OKC was consistently scoring high numbers during the entire season, and they scored 94 points, and they struggled to do it. This was terrible efficiency because since when teams game plan for you, they will have an advantage over your team, and you need to outweigh that advantage by playing well. Shai was the main proponent of this game. Even though he was bad from three, he seemed unstoppable in the mid range. It seemed like he could shoot anything for most of his shots. And even when he was shooting badly, his gravity in this game was greatly felt. And it is something that stars have more of in the playoffs. Teams know that they're going to try to feed the stars, and actually, Shai's gravity made Jalen Williams have easier buckets and have a phenomenal game. Jalen Williams, up until the end of it, was energetic, getting steals, flying around the court, getting tough buckets, shooting, and he was really the reason why OKC was managing to stay afloat, especially in combination to the bench. Aaron Wiggins, Cason Wallace, Isaiah Joe, like all of those guys were shooting weight. Jalen Williams, the other one, the one that comes off the bench. All of those guys played, even though they played low minutes, they played significant roles. With Isaiah Joe even being the guy who locked up CJ McCollum at the end of the game to force a bad three-pointer. I believe that the Pelicans in this series are going to look at it and be mad if they do not win it, because they have all the resources to completely smoke the Oklahoma City Thunder in every way. When it comes to roster construction, they can abuse mismatches, they can go and take them in whatever way they want. And apart from all of this, they also have the advantage that they have players who have been in these types of situations before. I do not think that both of these teams will replicate this terrible of a game. Oklahoma City shot 43.5% from the field, 31% from three, 77% from the line. Meanwhile, New Orleans shot 39% from the field, 28% from three, and 78% from the free throw line. I don't think that's happening again. They shot terribly. But when we look at the players, when we look at the depth, and when we look at the guys who are going to make a difference, if this was a game where the Pelicans were playing the way that they were playing, then I think that they could actually win 2 or 3 games and maybe even steal the series. This game was not conclusive. It was in Oklahoma, and yes, it was their first game there, but what tells me that their style, that their no rebounding, that Chet at center, is going to work for the duration of the season. And this is where I feel like you have to make some adjustments. For next season, Oklahoma has to look for a bigger center, put Chet at the power forward. Make sure to run Jalen Williams the way that you do. And Josh Giddey is absolute trash. Do not run him if you don't need to. He was terrible this game, doing absolutely nothing. He had a positive plus minus because he was there in the parts where the Thunder were doing well. But honestly, he looked like a cone out there. And for the Pelicans, they actually are probably happier being in this situation than they are not. Obviously, having Zion be injured is never good. But with the way that this has shown the strength and resilience of your team, of your coach, and of your whole system, it's very good. Like, the guys are still fighting. They still want to win. Zion is expected to come back in 2 weeks. Well, I don't know if 2 weeks from now, but he's expected to come back in May. And now we got this system of, it's like everyone is playing hard. Everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to go and put themselves through this experience. And even if Zion is not there, the team has not stopped playing hard, playing consistent, and being great. And that is just something that I admire about the Pelicans. They managed to beat the Kings without Zion. They almost managed to beat the Pelicans. They almost managed to beat the Thunder without Zion. And now they have put themselves in a position where, even though I do think that it is not as much about their players, it is more about Willie Green as a coach. because I do believe he's one of the best head coaches, and what he's done with this young team has been amazing. And I do believe that they trust him a lot and they ride with him until the death with the way that he runs their team. But I also do think that it has been very uplifting to see such a team which has gone through such hard times be able to come back from this adversity and be able to just see themselves now in a good light and in a way that is actually benefiting them, because they have grown immensely in terms of their execution.